Okay, welcome. Welcome, everybody. We are here about to start the graduate open house for the master's programs in counseling. So hopefully you are all in the right place. Um, please feel free to show your lovely face and your video. You do not have to, but it's always nice to see folks. So we welcome the sharing of faces if you are interested in doing that. Okay, so welcome. Today we are going to, I know people will be rolling in, but we've got a lot to cover, and I know a lot of you are also interested potentially in the CWA program, right? Which has its open house right after this, and they're intricately tied right together, our PPS school counseling and CWA programs. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I always like to start off with a grounding exercise. And for me, especially given the time of, politically and sociopolitically that we are in right now, it can be stressful. And so I'm hoping that we can all start a relaxation playlist. So bear with me, but if you want to go right to the chat and share with us your favorite song to relax to when you're stressed out. You can share more than one if you'd like, but at least one song that makes you happy or relaxed. And what we will do is when we are done with this presentation, we will follow up with an email of the recording of this open house, as well as our own special playlist that we've created as part of this community. So thank you, Limni, for starting us out. Dr. Francis. I love that song too. You Can Call Me Al. That's an oldie but goodie. Oh, thank you. Okay, so you take a look and see what your peers are writing. You've all got some good ones. Excellent. Okay. So continue to feel free to add to that playlist as we move forward. But we have a lot to do today. So I'm going to just go ahead and get started right now. And then that playlist will be to be continued throughout whenever you think of a song, feel free to add. All right, so welcome everybody. I literally just got this slide from Dr. Blanco about 2 minutes before this existed. This is our brag sheet of our School of Education. So welcome to the LMU School of Education, specifically to the multiple options for the counseling, the Master's in Counseling programs. We have a couple of students here that have taken time out of their busy day who are going to talk to you as well. But we just wanted to begin by saying we're glad you're here and we're very proud of our school and of course our program as well. So here's some more bragging rights. We are one of the few Masters in Counseling graduate programs that offers several options, meaning that you don't have to come in knowing exactly what kind of counselor you want to be. There's different options for you to add. Maybe life happens and you want to switch programs. I know a lot of other Cal States nearby, they don't have that flexibility. And so we really do want to highlight that at the beginning, just to know that you might know the field, but you might not know the setting in which you want to do. So we're going to walk you through that a little bit today too. Um, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. What's on our agenda for today? We're going to talk a little bit about who we are. You're going to see the faces of our community. We like to think of ourselves as an LMU family here in the department and the counseling programs. So you're going to talk a little, we're going to talk a little bit about faculty, staff, and students that are going to be here to support you should you join us. And then we're going to dive into what do our programs look like? What are the career options for you? That flexibility I mentioned. After that, we're going to go a little bit into the questions I'm sure a lot of you might have. What does it look like? When are the classes offered? Are there summer sessions? And then we're going to talk about student support, and we're going to turn it over to our two wonderful graduate students who volunteered their time today to talk a little bit about what it's been like for them. And they're currently in our master's program at different tracks. We will end with all the questions you might have about how do I do my counseling application, what's required, what are the things that set me apart, any specific questions you might have about GPA or anything like that, what's required. And then if we have time, I always love to do this, is to get you in partner pairs just to as a little icebreaker to see if you get to know each other. So we'll see if we have time for that as well. All right. So we're going to begin by introducing ourselves. My name is Dr. Sherry Castro Atwater. I'm the program director for the last, I want to say 8 years. And I've been a professor in counseling programs for the last 22 years. And this is one of my favorite things to do is this open house to meet prospective students. And I have an amazing team of faculty and administrators here. So I'm going to turn it over first to Dr. Marianne Francis to introduce herself as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atwater. Thank you. Thank you. I am Dr. Maryanne Francis. I'm the assistant director of all the wonderful programs that we have, which if you don't know already, we have plenty. It's such a pleasure to be able to work with Dr. Atwater as well as our wonderful faculty here, which you'll get to know in a bit. I also teach in fieldwork primarily for almost 7 years now, so kind of overseeing the journey right at the end where our students immerse themselves in the field. It's such a pleasure to be able to be a university supervisor as well. And I look forward to getting to know all of you very soon, hopefully. Back to you, Dr. Alba.
Wonderful, thank you. We also have Dr. Kat Blanco, who is not only faculty in our program, but also directs the Child Welfare and Attendance add-on program to the PPS credential. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Blanco.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I too am excited to be here and meet with prospective candidates. I'm Dr. Blanco. I not only teach full-time for the CWA add-on credential program, I'm also academic director, and I'm the point of contact for school counselor residency programs that we are currently developing here to begin next fall. I'll pass it back to Dr. Atwater. That was quite a mouthful.
Wonderful, thank you. And now we're also joined by our advisor. Now, our advisor is customized to you. So this is somebody who works with all of our Masters in Counseling programs. But again, like I mentioned, the flexibility, if you decide to change program tracks, Ms. Baez would be the person to speak with. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Anna Baez.
Thank you, Dr. Atwater. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. My name is Ana Baez. I am the academic advisor. I'm also an alumni from one of the programs here in the counseling track. Thank you for being here, and I'm excited to be here with you all, and I'm ready to work with you hopefully soon. Thank you, and back to you, Dr. Atwater.
Okay, so wonderful. So that's a little representation of who we are. We also have Dr. Fernando Estrada, who's an associate professor in our program, teaches a lot of our foundational courses, including social emotional functioning, multicultural counseling. And if you're interested in doing research, he often welcomes students to do research with him and presents at conferences. We all do that as full-time faculty, but he has taken a particular interest in that. His current research looks at the intersectionality between the LGBTQ community and the Latinx community. Next, we have Dr. Maya Hoskin, who recently returned from maternity leave. She's an assistant professor in our counseling programs as well. She teaches lifespan development, multicultural counseling, a slew of our courses, and we're really lucky to have her. And then Dr. Kathleen Blanco, who you met. So those are all of our full-time faculty. Below the line, you have our administrators. And our administrators are all here to support you, just like the program director and the faculty you see. We pride ourselves on trying to respond to any questions that you might have. In addition to Dr. Francis and Ms. Baez, you see the smiling face of Esther Gobriel right here. She is our fieldwork liaison and administrator. She is so lovely that she said, "Do you want me to come and introduce myself?" And I said, "Absolutely not," because she's the person who will orient you at fieldwork. So she's doing these kinds of orientations for you if you're in the program, right as you're about to do the most scary and anxious part for a lot of folks, which is launching straight into the internship. So she wanted to be here, but had a ton on her plate. So I really encouraged her I said, they'll all meet you eventually. So, but she is just the calming presence that you need, and does everything from MOUs and reaching out to school district partners, mental health clinic partners, higher education sites. Depending on the track you're in, she will help you find the internship and walk you through that process. Any questions about who we are so far? I'll launch right into then what makes our school unique. So If you are doing your due diligence, you're likely looking at a ton of different options for you. There are kind of things off the bat that make our program pretty unique here at LMU. And the very first is that we have students who want to both be in schools and or be mental health clinicians. So in other words, they wanted to receive, similar to an MFT, a licensed clinical counselor, right, eligibility. So we have the program where you can do both. You can do one, you can do the other, or you can combine them. So that makes our program unique. If you add both the LPCC and the PPS, it is a 60-unit option right now. 4 additional courses are offered for the LPCC eligibility. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that does make our program stand out from other programs. A lot of programs you walk in and you have to stick with one track. This offers you the ability to both be immediately employable upon graduation as a school counselor, if you were to do both, but also eventually go into private practice, seeing children and adults if you wanted to. We also have on-site training prior to your internship so that you're not a deer in headlights. If you're interested in working in a school, you have the ability to take classes at a local school site where you can get engaged in both individual and group counseling. All right. We also talked about our child welfare and attendance authorization. We are one of the only schools that offers this program as a standalone program, both for our current students and for students who might have graduated already with their PPS and want to come back and add that. Why do you want to do that? It's very important, right? Especially post-COVID for a lot of students experiencing maybe they're unhoused, foster youth, transitionary housing, maybe they have trouble coming to school or getting their diploma, right? So there's a whole market out there for a need out there for counselors to be trained in how to work with students who have been historically marginalized, maybe outside of the confines of the school counseling office, right? So this is the closest thing you can think of it to almost to school social work, right? Where are students when they're not in school and providing those wraparound services? So that's right now an additional 9 units. We're hoping to embed that eventually into our existing program as well. And then finally, last but not least, I mentioned Dr. Fernando Estrada. There is a bilingual counselor badge. Students who speak, who are bilingual in Spanish and English can apply for this during the very end, their final semester with us. And it's a badge that recognizes your Spanish language proficiency. You can put it on your diploma, and it allows you to say, I can conduct counseling sessions and do work both in Spanish and English professionally. All right. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I'm gonna hang on one second. Let's see. Did I lose everybody or am I still sharing? Can everybody see this?
You're still sharing.
I'm still sharing. Okay, great.
Just not in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. You know what it is? I accidentally dropped the ball there. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So program goals. What we have here are the different things that make us, that are central to our program. Know thyself before helping others. So we have a lot of courses that focus on what are our own personal biases? What do they bring to the table? What is our professional identity? So there's a lot of self-reflection built into every single class. We also are guided by the Jesuit and Marymount traditions. That's steeped into our program. Curia personalis, care of the whole person, right? That's grounded in our tradition, and it's basically a social justice and multicultural approach that says that we care about the entirety, right, of who you are. We're all works in progress. We've all made mistakes in the past. We're all headed somewhere towards personal growth, with an emphasis on helping historically marginalized communities, right? So that's a key tenet of our program. And then, oops, apologies. We also really look at, and this is not just an academic program, this is a professional competency program too, right? To be an effective counselor, you have to have really good interpersonal skills, right? You have to be a good communicator, be punctual, lead with compassion, be a responsible performer, take initiative. So from the very beginning, when you enter the program, we're looking to those qualities, to see those qualities in all of you. And when we do, we also really expect that you recognize those in yourself. What does this look like? By the end of the first semester, we ask you to fill out a disposition form saying what skills and dispositions did you thrive in over this first semester of the program? And we have you reach out to one faculty member who can also provide a disposition form ranking for you. Yes, they did well in this. Yes, they were on time to class. Yes, they communicated when they needed to. So we're looking to be a job reference for you, right? We want to see you thrive from the beginning of the program to the very end. We have these 3 different specializations or tracks, and we're going to talk about what those look like. But this is the flexibility I was talking about. With all of these different options, you are sure to find the space and place that is right for you. So we have 3 different counseling program specialization options. So take a look here, pause for a moment. Many of you are here because you think you know which one you want to be in. But again, maybe you come here and you're enrolled in the PPS school counseling program. And then you decide you're going to add the child welfare and attendance, right? And then you're with your peers. And some of them say, oh, for 4 additional classes, you can also get your LPCC eligibility. Well, what does that look like? Well, maybe I would be interested in that. So these are the different options. So if you want to work, right, this in a higher education setting, you're looking at the guidance and counseling. In fact, we're in the process of changing that name to better reflect what it actually is. We're going to call it College Counseling and Student Affairs. So that's our 41-unit program. Those are students who know they want to work in higher education. So Ms. Baez is a great example of an alumni of this particular program. Now she's working with all of you in higher education. If you choose this option, your field work is 1 semester, and it's currently 200 hours. We're actually increasing that to be about 300 hours during 1 semester. This is important to know. It doesn't lead to a credential and it doesn't lead to licensure. So this is one option for you if you know you want to work in higher education. Our more popular programs are including the PPS and school counseling. So that's a 48-unit program. That's when I know I want to work in a K-12 school district, similar to how we see Antonio right here. He's at his fieldwork site right now. So you want to work at the elementary or the middle or the high school or even the PK level. And if you know that this is for you, it's a 48-unit program, additional units if you add the CWA. But the fieldwork is now essentially a year. It's 2 semesters long. It is 800 hours, 400 per semester. So what that looks like is roughly 25 to 30 hours a week in a school setting. And again, we have Esther Gabriel to prep you for that so that she can help you with all the things it takes, right, to get that job at your internship and to see, maybe you want to work close to home so that you're not commuting, right? So there's a long list. We have a ton of school district partners that already have MOUs with us and are training sites at this level. The Master's in Counseling with the LPCC, you add 4 additional classes from the school counseling credential, and you also can have LPCC eligibility. This is if you're not sure what your career is going to look like and where it's going to take you. Maybe you want to work in a mental health clinic, hospital, or private practice. And maybe you want to start off working in the schools, right? And if you're adding the PPS, that gives you the maximum flexibility for your career. But if we also have students that say, I love clinical work. I want to be a licensed clinical counselor, a therapist, but I don't necessarily want to ever work in a school. So for those students, it's a 60-unit program and it's LPCC. Your fieldwork internship would look different. Instead of being at a school site, it would be at a mental health clinic. Instead of 800 hours, it would be 600 hours, but more of those 600 hours are you engaging in individual and group therapy. Okay. And finally, we have the CWA add-on. That's an extra right now. It's an extra add-on, 9 units for our current students. It's a fully online. It's offered Saturdays. So there are a lot of students who really have this added to their credential because it does make you more marketable as a school counselor, particularly within LAUSD. It's called a PSA counselor, right? So you have an option to add that here while you're here and then seek different opportunities. Okay, so we're going to come back to that if there are any questions, but for right now, I'm going to keep on moving because I want to honor the time that our students are putting into taking time out of their busy student schedule. So I'm going to get to them in just a second so that they can share a little bit about what it's been like for them as students here. So as you know, we have a customized learning approach. We all start with these introductory foundational courses. We offer 2 summer semesters, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. And then as you move on from these introductory courses, we have what we call intermediate courses. And these are courses that require prerequisites, right? You have to have taken helping skills, for example, in order to be in multicultural counseling, right? So there's different intermediate courses. There's 2 summer semesters. So there's a summer 1 and a summer 2. So there's a lot of options to take classes in the summer. Just remember they're very much condensed. So they're very quick. And we'll talk about what that looks like in a little bit. This is all leading on your journey to your final internship. And that is where you have the option to engage in the full, experience of being either at a school setting or a mental health clinic or a higher education setting, depending on your program. And we're going to walk you through, not necessarily handhold you, but definitely give you all of the things you need to be successful when it comes time for your fieldwork. We don't just throw you out and tell you to find something. We really walk you through what the options are and what you need to do. All right. And of course, Miss Baez and her lovely picture right there, she's the one to help you along the way. So we highly recommend you meet with her online at least, right? Once a semester to plan out your courses. We are not a cohort program, so we don't force you to take certain classes at certain times. We know that people prefer online classes sometimes. Sometimes people prefer in person or hybrid. Let your advisor know what your preferences are. Let them, know what's going on in your life so we can help customize this approach for you. Communicate, right? If there's something that happens and you can't be available on a Wednesday night and that class was scheduled, you need to talk to your advisor and she'll be the one to help you through that. All right. Yes, Dilla, you have a question?
Delia, yes.
Dilla.
Going back to the former slide, the different options,
Mhm.
there was the LPCC plus the PPS option, and then
Yes.
the child welfare. Just to clarify, are we able to add the child welfare to the LPCC and PPS? Okay, I
You
just wasn't
absolutely can.
sure. I wasn't
Yes.
sure. All right,
Yeah, great question. You can. It makes it about right now 69 units. We're trying to get the unit count a little bit more affordable for folks, but for right now, it's still a full option for you because this is offered Saturdays online. So we have a lot of students who do all of it, right?
great,
And
great.
definitely do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Sure. Good question. Okay. Now, without further ado, it is my great, pleasure to introduce the president of our Counseling Graduate Student Association. Antonio Huerga is here taking time out of his busy fieldwork day. And we also have another student, Matt, that's also going to share their perspective. So I'm going to turn it over to the student.
Master's Advanced in Counseling track and pursuing a career in academic and career counseling and higher education to support young adults and college students, particularly underserved students and young men. I see myself working at a community college for a university or a nonprofit organization after graduation. And this is my first semester in the program, so I'm pretty fresh. I chose this program because of the emphasis on tackling social justice issues, the Jesuit values, flexibility of the program, the opportunity to provide mental health, academic, and career support post-graduation. And I'm currently the co-VP of professional development in CGSA with Antonio. And so far, I've just really enjoyed building community and going to social events, going to fundraisers, helping out, and just, building those relationships, making friends, having new colleagues that I can chat with about the different programs. And currently, my main task as a member of the exec board, as a co-VP of professional development, is working on the Gale Spirit Week. So we're going to have a Gale conference coming up at the beginning of April, and that is basically the theme of the conference is community cultural wealth, harnessing strength in diversity and inclusion, and it's bringing together current students and alumni. I think GALE stands for Graduate Alumni Leaders in Education. So I'm doing the Spirit Week leading up to that. doing event organizing. We're also doing a fundraiser for Homeboy Industries, a local nonprofit that we chose that we felt really embodies the theme of the Gale Conference. And if you guys don't know Homeboy Industries, it's an organization that provides hope, training, and support to formerly gang involved and previously incarcerated people, allowing them to redirect their lives and become contributing members of our community. So I'm really excited about fundraising for that nonprofit. And yeah, if there's anything else that I can share, let me know.
Thank you so much, Matt. And we're going to turn it over to Antonio. And then a lot of you usually have questions for students. So we will turn it over to Q&A after, but we will also encourage you to use the chat if you have questions as well. All right. So without further ado, Antonio, please take it away.
Yeah, oh my God, what an incredible honor. I mean, hearing Matt speak, Matt just started off as a first year here, and to hear him so incredibly involved fulfills my heart. It makes me feel a little proud of how far CGSA has come. But hi, folks. My name is Antonio Huereca. I use he, him pronouns. I am a third year student, so I'm at the tail end of this LMU program. Graduation is only a mere 53 days away for me, which I'm so excited. I have the very distinguished honor of being president this year of the Counseling Graduate Student Association. So I, along with 14 other counseling students, create the board to put on events like this. And I'm very proud that CGSA has taken a direction where we're very involved in our community and making fundraisers like that happen, especially in a time where I feel like resilience is very needed. But that being said, I think it's very reflected upon the curriculum of LMU and what LMU teaches you to be involved in that community at that capacity. I think one thing that we need to take a lot more seriously is that as counselors, we need to do our due diligence in being involved in the community and supporting in one way or another. So that's just one avenue for you to go ahead and do that. But a little bit about CGSA, our four main pillars, of course, we focus on academics. So we provide peer-to-peer academic support, community engagement. So whether that be in the form of socials or mentorship opportunities where you get paired up as a first year with an existing second year or third year. We also have those professional development opportunities. So presenting your research like the Gale conference that we have coming up. And of course, opportunities in servant leadership. So of course, if any of you one day want to go ahead and be a part of board, that is very much a possibility for you. I mean, of course, working under faculty and staff and having the guidance of Dr. Atwater and Dr. Francis and guiding you through these projects in the greater LMU community, I feel could be a really, really cool opportunity for all of you as up and coming counselors. But that's just, of course, CGSA. A little bit about me, of course, I'm in my third year. I'm particularly doing the school counseling pathway. So I'm doing the PPS, just the PPS with the CWA add-on. I personally see myself out of school. I love working specifically in the college realm. I like the transition pathway between seniors to college. I think that's where I shine the best. But it's very guided with my own personal journey. I'm very vocal about this. I was actually one of the few students that got accepted into LMU via their conditional admission, which means that I actually did not have the GPA required to apply to this program. But because of LMU's values and going through the other pathway, I actually appealed my way in, and here I am as a third year shining really bright. And this entire journey has been so fulfilling because there was a point in time where I was a high school student from LAUSD, third in my class. And then after that, I bombed really hard at UCLA. And that pathway for me was something that was very pivotal, but it was always the adults, it was always the counselors that always saw potential in me and guided me in the right direction. And eventually I did get to graduate. I did get to move forward with my bachelor's, and 3 years later, I got into LMU. So I think there's special adults in the world that kind of point you in that right pathway, and that very much influenced my trajectory through LMU. And I think also with the LMU curriculum, having professors and counselors who have already had this experience and come back and teach and let you all know, it really aligned with my vision as what I want to do working in the community. Obviously, I see students who are in my exact shoes in current LAUSD schools, and coming in with that, my own story piece combined with the level of care that a lot of LMU faculty have, I think has really, really made me shine particularly this third year. I'm in my fieldwork stage right now, and I think I've been able to really hit the ground running and make an impact. And I think that's ultimately what we're all trying to do. We all have a why. We all wanted to do something in this world related to counseling. So I feel like if that can influence you in any way to have you pursue counseling, more specifically with LMU, I wholeheartedly feel like this is the right pathway for you. I'm also open to any personal questions. Of course, that's just a little 5-minute spiel about what my story has been. But of course, if you have questions about what the classes are like, what the caseload is like, what capacity and all that stuff, I'm more than happy to answer those things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, for being here. And I think Antonio's story really speaks for itself about the type of student that we attract and that we want to promote in the world, those who give back, those who are helped by their community. You will find a place here. Questions for either of our students before we move on, or any in the chat? Let's see. Now is your chance to ask. I know sometimes it's easier when faculty aren't in the room. So if you come here, Counseling Graduate Student Association has its own Discord. It's got its own meetings and spaces to get that mentorship as well. Questions, though, right now that we can take. Yes, and Antonio put in this shot. Oh, yes, don't be shy.
Hi. Being a non-cohorted program, how does that make it, besides, more flexibility within the schedule? How does that make you guys stand out between other universities with similar programs?
Yeah, of course. I think it's very interesting because LMU does their rolling admission. So of course we have a cohort coming in fall, and then you have another cohort coming in spring. I think that just makes the ability of networking that much more apparent. And I think that's what CGSA in particular is really trying to bridge together. Normally cohorted schools, you know your classmates very well. It's a group of 10 or 20 students and you all progress in the same way. However, because LMU does a staggered approach where we're getting in folks bit by bit, that mentorship piece is a lot more streamlined. So whenever you say, for example, do Grace CGSA eventually, you get to be paired up with a second year or a third year that can guide you through that process and kind of let you know, all right, these are the classes that I'm taking now. There is a little bit of differentiation between the scheduling, of course. Like you may take helping skills first and then you do foundations of counseling, but that interconnectedness, and because class sizes are generally small as well, it does kind of feel like a cohort, if you will, because you see each other so many times that at the end of the day, you do learn each other. And, even though Matt's a first year and I'm a third year, I have seen Matt on campus and we kind of cross paths in that way. So the connections are very much still there, but it gives you that flexibility where you can talk to second years and third years and see how their counseling journey is like. Because you'll find, and I think this is another question, the curriculum allows itself for you to be vulnerable because it allows you to explore facets of counseling that really attract you. And in that vulnerability, I feel like where that naturally, you find yourself kind of building those connections with your peers. And yeah, so it does invite you to consider a lot. You'll be hearing invite to consider very frequently. But I think it's definitely something to look forward to for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Delia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I had a question. Once students start the program, does LMU allow for students, if needed, to take a semester off and be able to continue into the program after semester? Okay, which leads me to my next question. Sometimes classes fill up, we're not able to take them. Does LMU have like a sister university that we can go to? Maybe they offer the classes that we could take online or in person? Like, do you allow for dual enrollment in different universities to honor the classes that are offered at LMU? Or do all the classes need to be taken at LMU?
So all the classes need to be taken at LMU, but we have you work with your advisor. So you would never be turned away from a class that you really, really needed.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't work with other, once you're in, and we know the plan. So if this is where Ms. Baez really is helpful. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Baez to just answer that in a bit, because this comes up, right?
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Divya. How are you? Thank
I'm well,
you.
thank you.
Great question. Yes, I do want to give you the reassurance that I collaborate with Dr. Atwater and Dr. Francis when it comes to building the schedule. And as
Hmm.
long as you continue to be transparent with me, let's say you are admitted into the program, I created plan for you, either the 2-year, 2.5, or the 3-year plan. And if you're transparent and you're like, you know what, this came up, how would that impact me? I will greatly appreciate that. And then I connect with Dr. Francis and we ensure that there's a seat available for you. So
Okay.
there will be no need to worry that there will never be a seat for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Libni, you had a question.
Yes, I'm currently at work, so I'm trying not to turn on my camera, but I really appreciate the this, Zoom meeting. I had a question, not sure if this is a time to ask, but I noticed I'm very interested in the guidance counseling, along with the LPCC. I know there is the, PPS and LPCC program that's dual, but is there anything if I was interested in doing like college counseling and mental health counseling?
Yes, absolutely. There is, and actually, I'll turn that over to Dr. Francis because I feel like I've been talking so much that Dr. Francis has a great answer for this too.
Absolutely. Our LPCC program is usually marked as one of our most marketable programs in that it kind of opens the doors to everything and anything, especially when you pair it with the PPS. That way, if you ever want to dip into K through 12, you have that option. And the difference between adding PPS and not adding PPS to the LPCC program is simply a shift in your placement in fieldwork. So it's not added classes. It's just a shift in your fieldwork placement, in that the focus is going to be on schools for the sake of the credential. So if you are kind of tied between, working LPCC and, working in higher ed, I would say taking the LPCC route would open up a lot of doors, and any door. You can, create your own practice. You can dip into mental health, um, you know, uh, placements where you can serve. And then again, the PPS credential will kind of help you dip into the K through 12 if you'd like to do that as well. So that would be my recommendation.
And Libni, we also have, if you higher ed counseling track has a specific course related to special topics in higher education. And so that is also an option for you if you were on the LPCC track but wanted to add that knowledge as well. So there's a lot of flexibility. So we really pride ourselves on working with students in that regard and just tell us where you want to be and what you want to do and how you want to be trained, and we'll help guide you in that direction.
Thank you
Which
so
goes right
much.
back to Miss Anna Baez's comment is, to be transparent with her. Tell her exactly what you would like to do, what path you see yourself doing, as well as your availability, whether you want summer classes, you don't want summer classes, you want a faster pace, a slower pace. That's the type of conversation you would have with Miss Anna Baez.
Absolutely. Thank
All right,
you.
thank
Okay,
you.
Oliver, question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm considering the LPCC program. Again, I don't know if this is the right time to ask it either. Maybe it's not, but I'm very curious about any insights you guys have into the differences between LPCC and LMFTs. I feel like everything I can on the internet about these different licenses and how they compare and social work. And, I've heard some people say that it's, better because it's more transferable to other states. And some people say it's less desirable in California specifically. And I also know that LMU does have an LMFT program specifically for art therapy. And I was wondering if anybody, I know some schools offer dual licensure tracks where you can do both, and I wonder if that is possible with those programs, or yeah. So that's my question.
Right. Right. So our dual program would be the school counseling attached with the LPCC, but we do have a lot of folks like yourself. They want to be licensed therapists. The difference in and the reason for the two existing, if you go to almost any other state, the licensed clinical counselor is the person you see for individual therapy. You here in California, because it was only offered about 15 to 20 years ago, we've been used to, oh, you're going to go see a therapist, you're going to go see an MFT, right? But technically they're a marriage and family therapist, right? The clinical counselor is the one for individuals, although they can also see couples and they can also see families and children. So really the difference is they're very similar and they're both governed by the Board of Behavioral Sciences. The difference is, at least at LMU, ours is more generalized for the clinical population. The art therapy program here at LMU is a wonderful program. It is definitely an LMFT and art therapy combination. It's a 3-year cohort program. It's wonderful, but we have a lot of students who will say, well, I went to the info session, but I'm not interested in art therapy per se.
Yeah, like that.
Right?
Me.
Yeah, and so that would be us. That would be the LPCC. So if you're interested, and as far as licensure goes, practicing in California, nearly identical. You can bill the same. There's the same opportunities for working in mental health clinics. So they're nearly identical in that respect. So all of, both MFT and LPCC can work with individuals, couples, and families. Yeah, so it's a great question, and I know there's a lot of confusion sometimes, but as far as LMU goes, we do not offer an MFT program that is generalized. It's just to art therapy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. So we do have a number of questions. If it's okay, I'm gonna, because a lot of them are about applications, and so I'm gonna head back to the slideshow just so we can get through a couple more slides, but hold those thoughts. And put your question in the chat as well, because I don't want to lose it. I don't want to miss it, if you will. Okay, so a special thanks to our students. I'm going to let them go unless there's any other student-specific questions. I want to give them a big round of applause and thank you, because I know it's not easy to stop your day to talk to prospective students. So thank you both, Antonio and Matt, for sharing your perspectives with us. Really appreciate that. Okay, so we are moving forward. Dr. Francis is the person to contact. If you come here and you're interested in the Counseling Graduate Student Association, membership's free. You just need to email, sign me up, and we'll get you on that list, and then we'll get you into the Student Association.
And just a quick note, Dr. Atwater, once you're in the program, you are considered a member of CGSA, a general member, but if you'd like to join, their what we call the Leo page to kind of get constant updates, to join their Discord page, that's also when you would contact me, and I'll connect you with the president directly.
That's right. Thank you. That's a shift in our protocol. You're added automatically if you're a member, or if you're automatic member of CGSA if you're admitted. Okay, so a couple questions I saw were about course offerings. So if I don't answer your question in the next few slides, please stay on and we'll have a conversation, a Q&A. All classes are mandatory. No class should be missed. We have a very strict attendance policy. Why? It's a counseling program, right? We need to have that communication, that face-to-face time. And so it, is really imperative that you look at the schedule. And if you think you're going to miss a class or two, take that class another time, right? Another semester. Work with your advisor, work with your faculty. We know things come up. We know you get sick. We know we need, to be flexible in that regard, and we will as much as we can. But just know that we do expect you to make every class. What does it look like in the fall and spring? We offer classes after school hours, because we have a lot of folks working either in schools or working full time in some capacity, and needing to get here and have classes in the afternoons or even just in the evenings. So our first scheduled time slot, classes are offered Monday through Thursday, no class on Fridays. So they're offered once a week, either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, 4:30 to 7, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7:15 to 9:45. And again, if you have a Monday class, it meets every Monday at 4:30 or every Monday at 7:15. So once a week. Some of them are online, some of them are hybrid, some of them are in person. And again, your advisor is the one to help navigate that and help work with what your mode of preference is. Now, we have people that take advantage of summer and are able to accelerate the time they're in the program. We also have people who want the summers off, who have other plans for the summer. But we do offer very intense summer semesters. The first one begins right after the spring semester ends. So we have a week off, and then mid-May to late June is summer semester 1. Early July to mid-August is summer semester 2. We highly recommend you do not take any more than 2 classes each summer semester, because they're very intense. Instead of meeting 16 weeks once a week, as you would have in the fall or spring, summer classes meet only 6 weeks, right? And so they meet twice a week for 6 weeks. And so even when you do the math, right, here you're meeting 16 times, here you're meeting 12 times, right? So you do have a lot of materials condensed. It's pushed in. I know Antonio was in a group counseling class I had. I think he knows what it's like to be very compacted. So they are harder because they're more intense. But we really encourage students to take advantage of that opportunity if they want to get courses out of the way in the summer, and so they have more time in the fall and spring. All summer classes again meet 2 times a week and run for 6 weeks. Average class size, you heard students allude to this, they're small, average of 15 to 20, but our clinical courses, helping skills, culturally responsive counseling, fieldwork, they're capped at 8, 12, 14, very, very small, so that we can give you clinical feedback, intense clinical feedback sometimes. So that's what it looks like, right? Just a semester at LMU. Semester 1, like most counseling programs, we consider you on provisional status or conditional status, right? You have to have every semester, you have to have a B or better in all classes in order to move on to the next semester. If you are having trouble with that, right, we will reach out to you and talk about alternatives. But everyone begins on this provisional status. Pass all classes with B or better, submit a candidate disposition form, and as long as there's no issue, you are, fully into the program and admitted. We don't want you to waste your time at a program that might, might not be a priority for you, right? And vice versa. So we just take this first semester to make sure all our ducks are in a row on both sides. Okay. That's a little bit about what our program looks like. And then you heard Ms. Baez say 2.5 to 3 years. That's usually, it depends on, of course, which program track and which fieldwork opportunity that you are investing in. So that looks different, right? Depending on which track and how many units, of course. All right, so a little bit about what our clinical training sequence looks like. So like an MFT program, the LPCC, the school counseling, no matter what type of counselor you are, you need really good clinical interviewing skills, right? You need to be able to communicate. So we start out everyone that we can taking helping skills their very first semester if possible. This is a clinical class where you start learning what everything comes out of your mouth. How is it intentional? Is it labeled? You connect with a peer and you conduct peer counseling sessions that are recorded and feedback's provided, and all for you to not be, worried by the time you hit your internship. You are very, very well trained in the art and science of the clinical process and counseling and therapy. You then continue on. We have a group counseling class and culturally responsive counseling we call CRC, where you have individual and group therapy opportunities also recorded that provide for you feedback, right? Intense feedback. And like anything, you're first working with your peers in a safe space, and then eventually you're working with volunteer clients, either in the schools or adults, right? And then, of course, this is all culminating in your fieldwork placement. We really pride ourselves on having our students not be a deer in headlights when they hit that internship. They can say, I have walked a client from the beginning of the counseling process all the way to the end. I know what an intake looks like. I know what a termination session looks like. I can do this because there's so much to learn during your internship year. We want you to be as prepared as possible. Another question, I think I might have seen it. It was in the chat. In lieu of a master's thesis, right? We have a comprehensive exam. This is same as a lot of programs throughout the country, counseling programs. They use the National Counseling Competency Exam, right? So we have the CPCE. Dr. Francis leads you through what that looks like. We require that you do a practice exam first. We find that really helps with students' level of anxiety and scores. But as far as studying for it, it's all the syllabi that you're collecting, all the program courses that you're doing. That is what you're studying, right? So you just review the courses prior to the exam. Sometimes folks say, I'm a terrible test taker. I'm scared about this exam, right? It covers 12 content areas. What if I bomb 1 or 2 areas? We do not require you to retake the whole exam. If you do not pass 1 or more of the 12, we reach out to you and provide an alternative for you to retake during that same semester so that you can eventually pass. We have not had students completely fail the exam and not be able to graduate. It hasn't happened yet, but we have had students that, just really didn't study or didn't feel like they got the best handle on one of the 12 core areas. And in that case, we reach out and we provide alternatives. But it must eventually, all 12 areas must be passed for graduation. But again, we do work with you and you can retake sections that are not passed, often right during the semester that you took the exam. All right, I'm going to slide right through these because I know there's a lot of questions that I want to make sure we get to all of them, including the ones in the chat. If you're interested in research, we have a lot of options for you, research and scholarship. So take a look at the slide. If you're interested in being a teaching assistant, get an A in a course. Be professional, right? And then email the full-time faculty. Say, hey, I was in your class last semester. I got an A. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any TA opportunities for me? Research assistant, RA, or graduate assistant, a GA. We have dedicated websites on LMU's website that has all the opportunities to be an RA or a GA. And these are great for students who come in maybe with a full-time job and realize at some point, oh, I want to transition more to part-time work, and they want to work on campus. And so there's a lot of opportunities there. We do send students on to PsyD programs, PhD programs, EDD doctoral programs. If you are interested in the doctoral road, please come talk to us. Any of our faculty are willing to talk to you about furthering your education beyond the master's level. And we welcome that. Every year we have a few folks who get accepted. I think I mentioned about opportunities to present your research, but again, we have faculty that you would reach out to and say, hey, I'm interested in your research. Can I be involved? And if there are positions available, they'll work with you as well. There is an Office of National, and this is a question I get a lot. Office of National and International Students has fellowship office, sorry, has a lot of opportunities from the Fulbright, Best and Brightest, Davis Putter Point, all these, scholarships you might not have heard of. But the director of ONIF is willing to assist all current students. So if you get into the program, one of the first places you'll want to go to is to see if you qualify for any fellowships while you're here. And that office will be the one to help you with that. If you're interested in student loans and a School of Education scholarships, there's a financial aid info session that happens usually, I think, is it later today, Dr. Francis? Maybe we can put that in the chat because I know a lot of folks have questions about financial aid. And so we do have information on that. There's a Zoom link and we'll put that in the chat. And it's going to be after the CWA orientation or open house as well.
Correct. That's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Okay, so stay on till 6 if you're interested in more in financial aid. Okay, applications, and then we'll take questions. Application deadlines, take a look here. We are a rolling admissions program. That's another thing that makes us unique. We do not just offer fall admission. So here's the deadlines to apply. For the fall admission, the deadline is June 15th. So that's the next one coming up. That is our biggest kind of group of students start in the fall in a traditional schedule, but we also have a November 15th deadline to start in January. And if you're interested in starting in the summer, you can roll over your application or turn it in by March 15th. And you can see, depending on when you apply, this is when instruction begins. So if you apply by the June 15th deadline, it starts August 25th is our start of our fall semester typically. January 13th, around there, is usually our start of our spring semester. And then, like I mentioned earlier, summer 1 semester starts mid-May. Okay, we do have a summer 2 start in early July, but we usually don't admit students for that summer 2 session. Okay. And let's see, Delia, I see that you have a question. I'm going to move over to admission requirements in case it's about that, but then I'll come back and circle back with you. I just want to get to this last slide because this is, again, answers a lot of the questions I'm seeing. Here's the admission requirements. So it's an online application. You need the statement of intent, official transcripts, 2 letters of recommendation. All MA, LPCC, and PPS program applicants will also need a certificate of clearance, which is very standard for all school counseling programs. And the California Basic Skills requirement, the CBEST, I believe is now waived in certain instances for students, and we can talk more about that in a second. Rolling admissions. Again, so you have 3 different opportunities to get your application in by. Okay, so this is all the information that we have for you today. We have a ton of questions. I'm going to ask Dr. Francis to monitor the chat with me as well. But I see, Delia, your hand is up. Did you have a question on this slide or the previous?
It was the previous slide, and yes, the deadline for summer 1st was March 15th. Is there any leeway if we turn it in by this week? Will you still accept the application?
Very, very good question. We always make exceptions for students depending on circumstance, right? I shouldn't say we always make them, but we always entertain them, right? So
Okay.
you see these deadlines, they're deadlines, right? But if there's an extenuating circumstance, or you said, I was waiting, this is often happens. I was waiting on one letter and I didn't want to turn in my whole application before I had a letter of rec. Go ahead and turn in what you have. I wouldn't say let that hold you back. But if you reach out to our admissions officers and say, I know it was a March 15th deadline and it's, March 26th, is it possible to still be considered for summer? If you are then, if your application is reviewed and you are invited to an interview, which would be the next step, then you can tell us there at the interview too. I'd really love it if there's space to start in summer to do that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so other questions, I know we have a ton in the chat. So Dr. Francis, do you want to kind of read out some of the ones that we have? Because I know, and we had some
Yes.
other folks with hands up too that I think added into the chat.
Yes. Okay. So are there any specific prereq courses that we need to have taken in undergrad? I believe 2 people asked that question. Okay.
Great. Okay, so just very, very quickly and very good questions. No, as a matter of fact, you do not even have to be a psych major to be in a counseling program. That's a misnomer. It's recommended psychology, sociology, or the human services, certainly because that gives you the experience that you and the courses kind of that are aligned with our program. But we have had business majors, we have had restaurant owners, we have had folks from all walks of life. We really look at GPA, and we do say that if you're coming from a non-human services field, that you go ahead and tell us why you're a good fit in your letter of intent, including any and all coaching, mentoring, or counseling experience that you have had. This could be that you're a mentor at a church, that you teach Sunday school, that you do, you coach Little League, and through that mentorship, you realize that this is something, that you really enjoy the counseling or the mentoring process. So just make sure that you highlight in your in your letter of intent and your interview why it is that you're making a switch, right, from a major that isn't aligned. And that will definitely help your application if you explain, well, I was an accounting major, and here's how I got here to the counseling program, right? We want to know your story. Okay, but no specific prerequisites are required. It's more that we look at GPA and reason why you want to be in counseling and experience, right? How do you know this is a fit for you, especially if you're coming from another program? Okay, other
Wonderful. And
questions?
then within the courses and the curriculum specifically, how is the department's DEI framework and focus applied?
Always, all the time,
Still apply. You are muted
in
now.
every course. I'm not quite sure what that is. Every single course has a DEI social justice framework focus. That does not change. We have the benefit and luxury of being a private institution. That is our mission, and it has been part of the Jesuit and Marymount traditions long before the political landscape, and it will continue to be. We are very vocal about that. So it is infused in every single course. We look at multicultural competencies. We focus on historically marginalized communities. DEI focus on implicit bias, colorblind, the effects of colorblindness. We talk about all of that heavily in every course, so that you're really informed. We talk about cultural humility and what that looks like. So it really is a huge part of our program. And so, yes, students should absolutely be aware that that is central, right, to the teaching and the training that you'll get.
All right. Then on that note of training, we do have another question about AI and how it's incorporated in our curriculum. Ever since COVID has hit us, we have been speaking on virtual therapy and our new reality, which incorporates, the virtual worlds. We constantly have tech days here where we see how we could incorporate AI in very creative ways. Actually, we call it God, not artificial intelligence, artificial inclusion is kind of how we see AI now. So mostly in field work, we really do, kind of incorporate AI in terms of creating materials and, really creative spreadsheets and worksheets for our students and our clients. So it's constantly being incorporated in some form, in some fashion, just to be aware of how the future is heading. And then we have,
I see a question on GPA. If I'm less than a 3.0, should I apply? Please do. If you have an exception, please write it in your letter of intent. We have had students who, for whatever reason, for some of the reasons that Antonio mentioned, freshman year didn't go well, right? It was a hard transition, or middle of college didn't look good. A GPA, you bombed a certain semester, you had to take a leave, We have students of all types. We would love to know your story in the letter of intent. If you are close to a 3.0, but you are not quite there, consider coming through exceptions, right? It does mean that if we're, impacted with applications, which we often are, 3.0 obviously is our minimum. But if you have a significant story about why you're not quite there, there's two things. Go ahead and ask and potentially apply through exceptions. You can also reach out to your Cheryl Hugo, who's our admissions counselor, and say, what can I do? And she'll often say, oh, go ahead and take a class at a community college, a higher level class, or another university, just to bump up the last 90 units. And we will use the last 90 units and recalculate. So there are a couple of options if your GPA falls short. Okay, it's not a guarantee, but I have seen it happen, and there are exceptions to be made sometimes, especially if you have a compelling story and maybe your GPA got back on track, but it was always impacted by your freshman year, for example. Sometimes that happens. So that's a good question. I saw another really good question about, oh yes, are you able to work full time? Very good question. Yes, we have most of our students working part or full time while engaging in the program. And it is only, and this is a huge only, it is only during the internship year when you are no longer allowed to work full time. And that is because it is literally impossible to be two places at once, right? To have demands. The internship year, it can be very demanding, especially if you're in the PPS, school counseling, or LPCC program. Very demanding. So we will not allow you to work full time during that final year, but a lot of our students work full time up until then. Okay.
Dr. Atwater, I'm sorry, I have to hop into the CWA open house really
yes.
quickly.
So the
And then I'll-
CWA is next. So thank you all for joining us. If you are interested in the CWA program, please hop on when you're ready to the Child Welfare and Attendance open house. I am going to stay on here in case there are questions that I still need to answer. So bye, Dr. Francis. Thank you so much. Bye, Dr. Blanco. I think she's already there.
Thank you
And
so
I hope to
much.
see many of you. Demetra, question.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes. So, NMBS kind of already answered it. It was about I asked if I can do both the LPCC and the PCC and art therapy. But due to the dual enrollment policy, we're not able to. But I have a question.
Mhm.
Will the classes that I take for LPCC be able to transfer over into the art therapy? Like, will
Probably.
they
Yeah, probably not. If you're thinking, that's the one program that I would decide first because
Okay.
we're in a different department.
Okay.
All of their classes are art therapy focused. If it
Okay.
was an MFT that was generic, I would
Yeah.
say maybe they would transfer over, but every single course has an art therapy component to it. So
Okay.
it probably wouldn't be a good transfer. Yeah, so you'd probably want to make that decision, go look at their program and determine what it is you really want to do because there's no dual enrollment. There's actually no reason to get an LMFT and an LPCC. You only need one license in California, and they both allow you to do everything seeing individuals, couples, and families. The difference of the art therapy is that's the art focus, right?
Okay.
But as far as a generic LMFT and a generic LPCC, they're essentially the same. They give you all the same rights, so you wouldn't need dual licensure. It's actually much more advantageous to get the PPS school counseling credential and licensure, which is what we offer, because there you're talking about maximizing your ability to work in schools and out of schools.
Okay. This is difficult. All right.
It's a difficult decision. Take your time with it, sit with it, and yeah, we're always here if you need additional information. Did I get questions? I'm trying to see if there's anything else that you have questions on. So different programs, licensed therapist and the school counselor programs. Again, if you were to come and you were to say, I want all maximizing, of all my options, you would do 60, right now, 69 units, right? The 3-year program is the LPCC, PPS and school counseling, child welfare and attendance add-on, and you could do anything, right? You could go in higher ed, you can go in schools, you can go in private practice, mental health clinics, all of the above. Okay, Cesar, you had a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask about, you mentioned something about the CVEST testing exemption. I'm interested
Oh,
in
yes, the
the,
California, yes, actually, Miss Baez, would you take that one? Because the California Basic Skills Requirement, the CBEST, used to be required for the PPS credential for program applicants. But now California has come out with some updates for us.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Adwater, and great question. There has been updates to the law specifically last year, and with the update, you can complete your basic skills requirement. You can fulfill it with your bachelor's degree or your BS degree. So no more need to take the CBEST if you haven't taken it.
Does this mean I can take off and delete this last requirement? It does, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
great to know. See, I'm glad we have Miss Baez here. So you don't have to worry about that, Cesar. As of, I think that's recent, very recent. Wonderful. Okay, so in other words, your bachelor's degree covers the CBEST automatically now, which we'd have been advocating for quite a while. Some of us who are program directors have wanted that for quite some time, so that's exciting news. Any other questions that I can help with? Karina, you said, please talk a bit more about the difference between counselor and therapist programs. I'm assuming you mean school counselor and therapist programs. Karina, did you have that question? I don't know if Karina can hear me, but yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So you meant the school counselor. So the difference, a lot of the courses are the same in the beginning. The difference is if you're in the schools, you're going to have a practicum. So in other words, a course where you are going to be working in the schools and doing individual counseling with students, K-12 students. If you're the LPCC program, then you're going to be working with adults. And then, of course, at your internship level, it depends on if you're getting both. You're going to be in the schools, but the amount of hours that you need on individual and group therapy are going to be much higher if you're also getting the LPCC and the PPS. If you're getting the LPCC clinical therapy license alone and you're not interested in schools, then your internship's going to be at a local mental health clinic and you'll be trained alongside MFTs and CSWs and LPCCs. In other words, to be a licensed therapist outside of the school setting. And that's where your internship would be. So it really differentiates the more advanced course practicum courses and internship is where you'll see that difference in training. Okay.
Well, my question was a little bit different. Maybe I wasn't clear on what I was asking.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
But you mentioned that it was more or less the same here in the state of California to have either or.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you're not talking about you're talking about the LMFT, the marriage and family therapist license.
Yes,
and
and
licensed professional. Yeah.
we could do it like it's kind of the same, but you just need one.
You just need one. Yeah, you just need one. Both these licensures, along with a licensed clinical social worker program, right? There's 3 license level clinician programs that are governed by the California State of Board of Behavioral Sciences. They share many of the same training requirements. And they also, when you graduate, they all require 3,000 supervised hours of clinical work. So in other words, you graduate from our program or any LMFT or LPCC program, you don't automatically have your license, right? It means you're license eligible. You still need to complete supervised hours, right? As an associate counselor. And you work under supervision in a private practice or in a mental health clinic and you have to accrue those hours. The reason that the PPS program is really helpful to do in combination is that a lot of times students graduate and they want to be employed right away, right? They want benefits. They want a job that they enjoy. And so we have a lot of students who go right into, because upon graduation with a PPS credential, you can go right into a school district and be a school counselor. Even if you know that might not be something you want to do forever, it allows you to accrue those licensure hours. And then eventually you can move out of the schools and you can go into clinics or private practice. So it really maximizes that. If you were just to get at the LPCC or just to get an LMFT, just remember your license doesn't come when you graduate, right? You just like any other license, you have to still work as an associate.
Talking about that, my background is a little bit different. I is business degree.
Okay.
So I've been how maybe you can guide me to talk to someone in particular about it because I have different things all over the place.
Okay, stay on because I'm happy to stay on and work with you individually because I've seen lots of folks like you before. So yeah, stay on and I'll help you out with that. Josephine, question.
Yes, hi. So for the like if I choose to do the LPCC and the
Mhm.
PPS, doing that along and adding the CWA, what is the total length of that? 3 years?
Very good question. 3 years. It's a 3-year program. It may be 2.5 if you're really good with the summers and you're really intense, but we typically see 3 years. It would be kind of a miracle for you to get out in 2.5. And that goes for any program, not just ours.
Okay.
And it's because they're governed by the state, right? How many classes, how many units. We are trying our very best. In fact, just submitted today a program request to embed the child welfare and attendance credential into the PPS. So instead of 69 units, it would be 63. So we're hoping that's approved. And if it is, then students entering, once it's approved, we'll have a little bit of more leeway to add that with less units. But still about a 3-year program. Yeah.
And then I had another quick
Mhm.
question.
Sure.
So the internships that are to do those, you have to do during that internship period, are those typically unpaid, to clarify?
That's a very good question as well. We do offer just this year and starting in the fall, we have what we call school counselor residence. And if you apply, let's say you come into the program and you're ready for your internship and you want to be a school counselor resident, it's competitive, but then we would offer paid stipends for your work. Typically, yeah, you have a lot of school counseling interns that are and school psychology interns, whatever, the intern level. Maybe you get a small stipend, maybe you get unpaid. So it's not guaranteed, but we're working really hard to get our interns some level of compensation. But for that reason, we do say, and we ask at the interview, how are you preparing yourself? Who's going to be your support system for that 1 year of your professional life, professional training when you can't work full time and you may not be paid, or at least paid what you should be, right? Paid for a full time job. It's not full time, it's 800 hours, but it's still roughly, that's 25, 30 hours a week. It's intense because you're learning. So how are you preparing for that? Because what we don't want is students to get to that year, even though we told them that, might not be paid. And then they say, oh my gosh, I need a job or I don't have a plan, right? So we really do work with you, try to get you funds, but we also try to get you prepped for that so that you can rely on maybe family or loans if you need them for that year, right? Because that's a tough year. And it's not just our program, it's everyone in the state.
Thank you.
Sure. Oliver, question.
Yeah, thank you for staying on to answer these.
Sure.
The so I have kind of two questions. One of them is very similar to the last question, and you talked briefly about a new thing you're doing, the residence, school residence or something.
Yes, school counselor
That
residence. Uh-huh.
is that just for people in school counseling, or would LPCC, is that different?
That's different. So if you
Okay.
were doing the LPCC, there are opportunities for funding for LPCC folks too.
Okay.
I mean, it could be a lot of money, but it's something you would work with. Remember, I mentioned the Office of National International Fellowships. As much as we can, we send out messages on funding sources, and they do pop up. But if you were to be the school counselor residency, it would be anyone adding who has the PPS as well. So it could be our LPCC and PPS folks.
Okay, so if you're LPCC, that last year
Yes.
is often unpaid, but there are some circumstances where there might be some funding.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. Also, if you're LPCC only, keep in mind it's 600 hours. It's not
600.
800. So a lot of times we have folks that we also have mental health clinics, training partners with local mental health clinics that offer time for you to do counseling on Saturday mornings, Friday evenings. It's a little bit more flexible. If you're in the schools, you're there when the students are there, 7:30 to 4, Monday through Friday. But if you're doing the LPCC only, we have students right now at the LGBTQ Center in downtown LA. They're working evenings. They're doing groups in the evenings. They're working Saturdays, but that gives them time to do some part-time work during that year. So it's going to be unique to your situation. And we don't allow full-time work because it's not possible, but it's a little more flexible with the LPCC only folks because it's 200 less hours and it's also usually at clinics that have more flexibility.
Okay, and thank you. And just lastly, you were saying something about how people in the school counseling have the benefit of being able to immediately go into a job.
Mhm.
Now, for people like myself who are interested specifically in LPCC, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Those roles at post grad and post internship where you're getting your 3,000 hours.
Mhm.
Those typically are paid jobs, correct?
Yeah.
You're an associate therapist or something, and it might
Yeah.
not be as much money as a full license, but it's similar in the sense that people are getting paid at that point, correct?
You are getting paid at that point typically. You don't always get, you don't always get your ideal amount of hours, right? So you'd have to really put that together, but you are considered an associate professional counselor. You have to apply to get that number, licensure, pre-licensure number. And then you usually work under supervision in private practice with someone else's private practice, right? Or a mental health clinic. And then it's just a matter of how many hours per week they give you, but they usually pay by the hour. Yeah. So it's in other words, it's not full-time with benefits, right? It's usually a different, and it can be, but there's many different ways, in other words, to make up those hours prior to being fully licensed. But there are jobs, yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be the same, yes, same as an MFT, right? So we have associate MFTs that aren't licensed, they finish their graduation, and they would go into getting that hourly rate. And yes, usually paid. Mhm.
Thanks.
Sure, good question. Cesar, I see another hand.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I'm a little confused or I'm curious because I actually want to do high school work with K through 12. So I know that the PPS is ideal program, but I
Yes,
also saw that you guys had the higher ed, like if you want to be a counselor with higher ed, which does not come with the PPS credential.
right.
Now, my question is, if I do the PPS credential with the LPCC, would I still be able to work for higher ed? Would I still be desirable for higher ed, or is it
Yes.
that?
No, you just said the LPCC. You mean if you did the PPS credential?
Yes, the PPS credential. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Good question. So if you graduated with the 48 unit PPS credential, you would be eligible to work in either a K-12 school district or potentially higher ed. They share all the same classes. What we would then ask you to do is tell your advisor, because your advisor would advise you. There is a special topics in higher education course, right, that our guidance and counseling folks get that the PPS folks aren't required to do. But if you know, oh, I'm between the two settings, I don't know which one I want to do, but I want to maximize my options to be in a school if I want, then we would say, okay, I would consider adding the 3-unit class on special topics in higher education, and consider also, we would advise you when it's your internship year, even though it's K-12, right? We think of elementary, middle, high school. A lot of school districts have alternative schools. They have transition programs. I think Antonio, the student, talked about this, right? He loves working with that age group of 18 to 21 years old. So you can get your PPS, you can ask that that be one of your settings, and you can work with young adults that, same age group you would be doing as higher ed. And that way, when you graduate, you'll have that experience and you can say, hey, I have my PPS credential, but my love is working with the 18 to 21-year-olds, right? And I worked in transition programs at a school district. So I'm very versed in career counseling and transitioning to jobs and career placement and higher, college counseling. So there are ways to tailor your experience in that way. And that's what I would recommend.
Thank you.
Sure. That's a great question. Anything else that I did not cover? Thank you all for spending this time and sharing your great questions. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you think of a question, as I often do, right as you finish, and you think, oh yeah, I forgot to ask that, feel free to shoot me a direct email. Otherwise, I will share this recording with you, share our playlist with you, and I hope to see your application very soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.